developers in a way that they had folks who had the big vision and were willing to work very collaborative and long-term with the community to make this happen. A key part of this, and we won't have time today to go into this, but we're going to share some resources with you that might be helpful, is to really take the time to do your research. One of the things that really empowered the City Council and the development group in Sahuarita were researchers at the University of Arizona. They sought these folks out and said, can you help us understand what's going on? Can you help us figure out how to have these conversations, how to do this research? One of the things that was really interesting, and this is where we became involved in the community, was they were beginning to look at this fact that you had young couples with young children moving into the community, and one of the spouses was working up the road in Tucson, and the other spouse was staying at home, but the average education of these folks that were moving into the community was bachelor's or even master's plus. And so through some innovative research, they found that there were 800 home-based businesses that had emerged in Sahuarita. This was the stay-at-home spouse who said, I've got a master's degree, I've got a career, I'm balancing my kids and my family, but I want to keep myself in the career work. And they said, we're more than a bedroom community. We have 800 small technology businesses operating in this community. What do we do with that? How do we make that an opportunity that further diversifies the community? Now, when we did the work up in Reno at the conference, and that was what, May, yeah, I forget, we talked about and pulled some of the household market profile research. We use a company called Esri, which basically slices and dices every American into one of 64 household types. And it's really useful. Now, we're more complex than that, but it's really useful. And one of the things we found that already well-rooted in the Reno region were New West residents. That's Esri's term, not ours. Relatively young, Hispanic, starting out, increasing technical skills, filling that part of your workforce. And because they're young, they're big consumers. They're buying houses, they're buying cars, they're investing. And then we stepped back and Sarah said, okay, well, with Tesla and all the other development that's going on, who's likely to come? Now, in South Tucson, it was a group called the Midland Crowd, which are well-educated young folks from the Midwest. Well, as we looked at the data, one of the groups we found that we thought is going to represent part of the group that will be coming into the Reno area is a group called Pacific Heights. A little older, management experiences, certain preferences, but a really good fit for the quality of life of the community. Now, do we know? Is that group starting to come? We'll have to test that. But this is a way in which you can begin to anticipate, because if you understand what are the attributes, what are the expectations of this particular group, and this is just one of 7 that we identified, then you can step back and say, can my community potentially be the home for those folks? Do we have the right assets? Do we want to go there? As opposed to simply waiting for the wave to come and then figuring out how you deal with it when it starts washing over your community. It's this kind of proactive intentionality. So what I'm going to do next is I want to, first of all, turn my watch right side up. It's like, what time is it? I've got it backwards. Is walk you through 3 potential opportunity groups. One is attracting young talent, and I think this is relevant whether you are the smallest community in Nevada or the largest, is that in this economy, in this society, you have to demographically renew yourself, but you also have to make yourself relevant to the emerging millennial generation, which in another 10 years is going to be the dominant. Already, we baby boomers are retiring. We're still powerful. We're still part of the game. The Gen Xs are now the increasingly dominant generation in the workforce and in decision-making. And like I say, another 10, 15 years, the millennials are going to assert themselves. So how does your community match up in terms of these new generations? So let's talk a little bit about attracting young talent. First of all, why attract families? And again, these are choices. This may not be a fit for your community. It may not be an opportunity for your community. But like Saharita, if you want to attract young families, you've got to understand what that's going to do. First of all, it can lead to demographic renewal. So for communities that are depopulating, this is huge. For other communities that may be aging or becoming really retiree dominant, this may be a way to balance things out and add some diversity. The bottom line is there's spending issues, or spending engines. They're going to drive your economy as they buy houses and washers and dryers. They're going to strengthen your retail and service sector because of their spending. They're also critical because they're going to meet your workforce needs. They're going to make your community more competitive because business now has the right kinds of human talent that it can draw on. And one of the most important things with businesses that are really interested in the long haul is, do they have access to the right human talent that's going to fuel their growth? They're innovative, and give them a little bit of time. In their 20s, there's no money. In the 30s, they're probably in debt. But as they become 40 and 50-year-olds, just like every other American generation, they're going to form assets. They're going to become your city council folks. They're going to become your mayors. They're going to contribute to your community. Sarah will talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to be sharing through USDA Rural Development a web link, and there's a number of guides. So if you'd like to learn more about this, we will go into that, and we've got one on attracting young families. A couple of other things before I move on to the next topic, the next opportunity, and that is to just reflect a little bit on why do people stay and why do people move. And oversimplified, but I think this graph kind of helps in that if you think about why people are staying, because the first challenge you face, the first opportunity, if you want to look at it on the entrepreneurial way, is how do you create a community that allows you to submit the proposition to your own children and grandchildren that this is a community where they want to live and spend their times. That's particularly important for rural communities or maybe urban neighborhoods that are struggling right now. So rooted people, it's tug of family, it's love of the kind of community life that they grew up in. It's a place where they want to raise their kids. This is a strong ethic among a lot of folks. And so if you are meeting those needs, you're going to be more competitive. What oftentimes those struggling communities aren't doing is we're not creating the kinds of economic opportunities. And so when we talk to rural youth who say, I would like to come back, but I'm going to have to leave because there's nothing here for me to do. There may be a job, but there may not be the kind of career opportunity that's going to allow that to happen. So if we look at the movers, the number one reason people move is there's an opportunity. So where you have growth, whether it's a mine that's expanding or opening up, whether it's the Tesla development, whether it's the resurgence of the entertainment industry that's been such a part of your state, those opportunities are going to draw people. And then the question is, if you're a community in, say, the greater Reno region, or we could look at this region, and you're a community within this area, do you have the right stuff? Can you create the right stuff that's going to be attractive so that that family can say, I'm going to be working here, but I want to live here because you have these kinds of things. So this is just a list of the core amenities. I would argue the most important thing that people look for is this idea of there's a social or cultural fit. Does the community feel welcoming? Sometimes we don't even realize it. But while we want to prosper, we're sending signals to new people, particularly if they look a little bit different than us, if they believe some things that are a little bit different than we believe, if they have some values that are maybe a little bit beyond where our core community is. Are we prepared to embrace that in a positive way? If you're not, folks that have choice are going to go to the places where they find there is that fit. Obviously, lifestyle preferences, career opportunities, and then we can go down the list with young families. These are the ingredients that allow you to become competitive in the human attraction game. Now, the second area I want to talk about, this is true to my heart, is attracting entrepreneurs. Now, there was a lot of discussion today about the business climate here in Nevada, and you've had some successes coming out of the Great Recession, and that's wonderful. I would argue one of the most important economic development goals that you want to focus on is how do you attract entrepreneurs? And that is a bit different. It's actually quite a bit different than attracting business. And if you read, Karsgaard's book, Life 2.0, it really comes through that folks who are in this entrepreneurial space are looking for the right community, knowing that they can grow that business almost anywhere. And I'll give you an example of that that's close to home in just a bit. So why entrepreneurs? We live in possibly the most challenging environment that we've ever been in. If you think about global competition, an emerging global society, the fact that no community has a right to exist if you can't demonstrate economic relevance, and you may be succeeding today, and in 5 years, competition someplace in the world is challenging what you've been good at, and now you have to reinvent yourselves. Well, having a critical mass of entrepreneurs in your community does a number of things. It brings that creative energy, because what do entrepreneurs do? They wake up every morning going, how can I sell something to somebody I've never sold something to before? They're on the leading edge of competitiveness. And when you have enough of those in your community, they not only kind of bring that into your culture and get your community to begin to think about that, but they may also become your peers on the city council and the school board, and they bring that energy to your community. Now, they're going to disrupt things a little bit, but they're also going to help you position to get into that competitive space. And that becomes terribly important, I think, to competitiveness. So a quick list. What do entrepreneurs want? And I see it every day because people kind of do a Google search and we come up fairly high in rural, and they think we can help them find a community. And it's like, no, we really don't do that. But I get to talk to them or exchange some emails. It's a different mix. It's a different product mix than you would find with business attraction. In their particular case, the most important thing is, are there other entrepreneurs? Are there people like them that they can network with? This is terribly important. It keeps the creative juices going. And chances are you've got more entrepreneurial talent in your community, whether you're small or large, than you think, once you begin to peel back and look at what's there. Places and spaces. One of my favorite communities is Collingwood, Ontario. It's about 70 miles north of Toronto, and it's a resort community. And one of the things they said is, we've got a great downtown, and the main floors of that old brick downtown are stores and shops, and it's full. But the second, third, and fourth stories are empty. And so they began, through a public-private partnership, to redevelop that into lofts and apartments and condos, knowing that there were people in Toronto who wanted to get out of the congestion of Toronto. They were still going to have strong business ties in Toronto, and they began to relocate to Collingwood, reinventing and diversifying the economy. Technology is important, business services is important, and then we come back to human talent. If they're going to stay in your community, they're going to have to find the people that they need to help fuel the growth of their business. And because they're people, quality of life matters. These are folks who have choice. And if housing isn't appropriate, if amenities aren't strong, they have the ability to pick up and take that vision and that energy and that business to another community where they think there's a stronger position. So once you get that nucleus of entrepreneurs and you build that reputation as an entrepreneurial community, there's other entrepreneurs who are looking at that because they want to get in that space. If you're interested, Google Fairfield, Iowa, a place that has no right to be entrepreneurial but is super entrepreneurial, and has built this reputation as a place that if you want to live in a community of about 5,000 to 6,000 people in a rural area of Iowa, this is the place to go because it's neat, it's vibrant, and there's lots of entrepreneurial activity. So the third group that Sarah asked me to talk about are retirees. And I'm going to hit this from a couple of different approaches. But I think the most important thing is the statistic. And if you're